Hello and welcome. In this video, we just want to talk about API and what API stands for. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is like a contract between two software, or like a connection by which pieces of software can interact. Now, most websites provide APIs to connect to their servers in order to fetch data or to return data. APIs can be used to build useful applications or software. For example, you can use the Yahoo Finance API to build an app that shows the latest stock price, or an app that can be used to track the latest stock price. Companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, as well as Oracle, they provide APIs that we can use in building softwares. Google provides the Android API that can be used to build Android apps. So APIs are very useful. Now, it is important to note that pieces of software can interact with or without an API. Now, the way this works is that the software or the application sends a request or query to the API, and as a response, the API returns data in JSON or XML format. So now this API makes it easier for programmers or developers to develop a program by providing all the necessary building blocks that can be used by the programmer. Now, there are so many APIs out there, including weather APIs. There are different weather APIs that can be used in building a weather app. In this tutorial, we're going to be making use of the Open Weather Map API. Now, this Open Weather Map API provides data for weather forecast, for current weather, that is, we can get current weather data as well as historical weather data. But for this application, we are only going to concentrate on current weather data and weather forecast, data for weather forecast. So we're going to be making use of this Open Weather Map. Now, to use this Open Weather Map API, we need to get an API key. And for us to get an API key, we'll need to sign up and then sign in to get the API key, which can be generated by us, or we can use the default API key that will be given to us. So this is the API that we are going to be making use of. So we are going to connect our application that we are building to the Open Weather Map API, which will return data to us in JSON or XML format. But what we are going to be making use of is just the JSON format, whereby we'll just iterate through the returned data and fetch the required data that we need, like the temperature, the pressure, the wind speed, humidity, and the rest. So in the next video, we are going to go to the openweathermap.org to go through the documentation, how we can use the API key to connect and get data in response. In this video, we want to go to the openweathermap.org website to go through the documentation and see the API we are going to be making use of. But first, we need to add a link to this Open Weather Map. So when we click on this, it will take us directly to the page. So we go to our index.html. Right here inside this link, Open Weather Map, let's add the link to the openweathermap.org site. So we say http:// then we can add this .openweathermap.org. So we have this http://www.openweathermap.org. Now we need to also add something. We want it to open on a new page. So we say target, we open on a blank page. So it's going to be blank. So when we click on this link, it's going to open this page on a new tab. So we've added this openweathermap.org. So we go back, we refresh. Now when we click on this link, now it will take us to the openweathermap.org. This is the site where we are going to get our API key from. For us to get started, you have to sign up to get an account. So that can allow you to get an API key. For me, I already signed up. So let me see how I can sign out, then sign in again. So if you don't have an account, you go to the sign up, you add the username, email, password, and you create an account, after which it will log you in automatically. But if you have and you're already logged out, you can just log in. For me, I will log in my account here, and so keep me or remember me. So now it says signed in successfully. Now it will take you to this page, this setup page. Then the next thing we need to do, you just leave everything as they are. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get the API key. To get your API key, you click on this tab here that says API keys. You click on it, and here you are going to see the key. So this is my own API key that I'm going to be making use of, because without this API key you can't get the weather data. Here you can use this default API key given to you, or you can generate a new API key. But for me, I will just make use of this API key, copy it and keep it somewhere. So you get your API key. Now the next thing is we click on this link here that says API. We click on it, it will take us to this page. Now, as I said earlier, we are going to only be looking at the current weather data and the forecast data. Now we have here on this page different data that can be used. The current weather data, 5-day to 3-hour forecasts. So if you use this, it's going to give you 5-day forecasts. You can get 16-day daily forecasts, historical data, then UV index, weather maps, and the rest. But we're only concerned about the current weather data and the forecast. But for the forecast, we might later decide whether to go with the 5-day or the 16-day, or allow the user to input the number of days they want to get the weather forecast on. So for the current data, because that is what we are looking at right now, we click on this API docs. Now it will take us to this page. Now to get the current data, we can make different API calls. As I always said, in our app, we're only making the API call by city name. But you can make API calls either by city name or by city name and country. So you could just add the city name and the country, or just only the city name. You can also get data or make the API call by city ID, because this open weather map, they have IDs for every city. But I wouldn't want to go with that, because it will have you to know all the IDs of all cities, which is really not necessary. So it's just better to go with the city name. So here it says we recommend to call API by city ID to get unambiguous result for your city. Well, if you know the ID of the city, you can go with this, but I would just suggest, or for me, I prefer to go by city name. Then you can get make API calls by geographic coordinates. That is, you can use the longitude and the latitude to make the calls. Then by zip code as well. So if we check here, to make the API call or the request, let's just copy this out first. Then we paste this in the browser. Now, if we try to send this, it's going to show us an error. Now, let me zoom this in so we can see. Here it's showing us an error, that code 41. It says invalid API key. Now, what this means is we cannot make the call without an API key. So for us to get the weather data, we need to add our API key. So what you're going to do is you need to add the API key to attach to this link. Now, to add the API key, what you just do is you add this ampersand sign, then app ID. You see app ID equal, then you add your API key. So after the name of the city, because this is the parameter, Q equals to name of the city, then ampersand, then app ID equal the name of your app, the API key that you have. Then you send. Now it's going to return this data in JSON format. So this is the returned data. Now if you look at it, it returned this as an object. Now we have the coordinates with the longitude and the latitude. Then we have this weather, which is an array, and inside the array we have the objects with keys and values. For the city London, it has an ID of 803. Then main, which is the cloud, it's cloud description. Then icon, this icon is an icon to display the kind of weather that the city London has. Then base, then we have temperature, pressure, humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature. We have the wind speed. Then we have other data here, the country, the sunrise, sunsets, and this other data. So we have this for London. Let's change this to a different city. Let's say Madrid. Let's change this to Madrid. Now we see we have different data, or data returned from Madrid with longitude, latitude. Now you can see the temperature and other data. So this is how the data will be returned. Then what we'll have to do is we'll go to, for every object, we just get the particular data that we want. Like for this, our current data, we're going to get the temperature, the pressure, the humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature for this particular city. Now, if you go back to the Open Weather API, so we can search by city ID, as well as search by geographic coordinates. Then also, as I said, you can use the zip code to search for the data, but we are only going to make use of city name. That is, make the API call by city name. Then, if you scroll down, the formats by which we can get response, we have the JSON format, the XML format. Now, since we are going to be making use of the JSON format, this is how the result will be returned, the way we have the result here. Then, the parameters to get the coordinates, that is to get this longitude and latitude from the JSON returned, you use cod.lon to get the longitude, then cod.lat to get the latitude. Then for the weather, that is, we have weather.id to get this. If you want to get this data here, this result, you use weather.id. Then if you want to get this result or the description, you use weather.main, weather.description, or weather.icon, which is the icon that will show if it's sunny or cloudy or whatever weather condition. Then also for the main, which is this object we have here. Inside the object we have the temperature, the pressure, humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature. Now to get the temperature, we use main.temp. That is this main, then .temp to get this temperature. Then for pressure, we do the same, humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature. Then sea level, ground level. Then for wind speed as well, we do the same. For wind speed, we do the same, wind.speed, wind.degree. Then for clouds, rain, snow. Then seas, to get the type, the ID, the message, country, sunrise, sunset. Then we can just use ID, name, and code to get the ID of the city, the name of the city, and other parameters. So if you want to return the data using this JSON format, that is how you're going to return the data. By default, if you don't specify any format, it's going to return the data in the JSON format by default. But if you want to return in the XML format, what you just need to do is add a parameter to this API call. Here we can add that by saying we add the ampersand, then we say mode. We add the mode and set it equal to XML. So by default, it's going to, without this mode, it's going to return the data in JSON. But if you add this mode equals to XML, it will return the data in XML formats. So you click, now we can see that the data is returned in XML format. Now we have the city, we have the wind, and we have other data. So we can get this. Now for the XML, to get the data, recall for JSON, to get the weather, we use weather.id, weather.main, weather.description. But for XML, you get the city, ID by use city.id, city.name. To get the longitude and latitude, city.cod.longitude, city.cod.latitude. Then for temperature, use temperature.value. This is for XML format. Then minimum temperature, you say temperature.min, maximum temperature, temperature.max. And this is the format you're going to use to return the data if you're using the XML format. Then also we have other features like the format, as I've said, the JSON, XML, HTML, but we're only interested in the JSON format. Then also something very important. Now, by default, there are three unit formats: the standard, the metric, and the imperial. Now, if no format is specified, it's going to return all formats in standard. If we look at the temperature, here, it's using the standard, and the standard is returned in as a Kelvin unit. So the temperature is returned in Kelvin. So we have this temperature value in Kelvin. That is if we do not specify any unit. But if we want to return the temperature in Fahrenheit, we can use the units as imperial, or if we want to return in Celsius, we use the units as metric. So we have the metric unit and the imperial unit. So for temperature in Fahrenheit, use units equals to imperial. So what you just need to do is just add, you can just change this here. You can change this and say units equal to, you can call this, use imperial. Let's see how it looks. Now, if you look, it returns the units in Fahrenheit. Even though we don't have the Fahrenheit symbol here, it's returned this in Fahrenheit. But if you want to return the temperature in Celsius, you can just use metric for this. Now we can see it returned the temperature in Celsius, and also the pressure and every other units. So, but what we are going to do for we are going to be using the metric units to return the data. So this is the units we are going to be making use of. So this is the API that we are using, and we are going to go to the JSON format to return this data. So you could just go through it on your own to understand how it works. You can just play around with it here on your browser to see the return data. So note that if you don't add this API key, it's going to return an error. So if you remove the API key and try to return the data, it's going to return an error because it doesn't work without the API key. So this is an overview of the current weather data we're going to get using the Open Weather Map API. So in the next video, we'll start working with this using jQuery. Welcome back. In the last video, we went to the openweathermap.org and we went through the API to see how we can use the data in the API. So we added the link here. If I click here, it's going to open the Open Weather Map. Then from here, go to the API, current weather data. So in the last video, we just went through this and we saw how the format, which is the JSON format that we're going to use, we saw how the data is being returned and how we can get the parameters for the JSON format. So in this video, we are going to actually see how it works. We're going to create the jQuery file that will enable us to retrieve this data and display the data here. So what we're going to do now is go to the current .html. We're going to add the jQuery file. So we'll go to our project. In the root directory, we create a new file. I'll call it weather.js. Now we've created this weather.js. Next thing, let's just add it to this current .html. So we add the file here. So src, which is the source, and it's called weather.js. So we don't forget to do that. Now, what we want to do first is we're going to add a click event to this button using this submit city. So we add a click event to this. The first thing to do here is to add the document ready. That is to get the document object model ready to be used by the events and the functions we are going to create. So we'll say document dot ready. Then we add a function. Then inside here we are going to add the events and the functions we are going to create. Now with this will allow us to use the events and the functions we are going to create. Now we want to add a click event, so we copy this ID from this button. So we add the events by using this, then hash, then the name of the ID of the button dot click. Then we add the function in it. So, but we can do this by just writing the code, the Ajax, make the Ajax request here, or we can do that in a function, then return the function inside of this. I think I'll go with the latter. I'll create the function here. I'll make the Ajax request or the call, then I'll return it inside the click event. So then here I'll just copy this. Then what I'll do here is just say return get weather. So what we're going to do is we are going to just create the Ajax request here, make the Ajax call here, then it's going to be returned in this. But if you decide that you want to just do it inside this click event, it's fine, you can do it inside the click event, but I'll do it this way. So the first thing, or the next thing to do, is get the ID of the input field. The ID of the input field is called city. So we create a variable called city, or you can call it any name, then set it equal to the value of the input field. And to get the value of the input field, we use the ID and the val method. And the name of the input, the ID of the input field is city.val. So with this, we get the value from the input field. That is this input field, we get it by the ID. Now, the next thing is we want to make sure that the input field is not empty. So say if city is not equal to empty, then we do whatever we're going to do in it. Then else we're just going to create or show an error message to the user. So create error. We don't have this we don't have any elements or any HTML elements with this div or with this ID. We're going to create that later, but here we'll say dot HTML. Then inside it we are going to add a div, then we close the div. Then we're going to put a message that says city field cannot be empty. So we don't want them to submit an empty field. So if the field is not empty, then we're going to make the Ajax. Now here you can either use the jQuery method called get or get JSON, or you can use the Ajax method. But here I'm going to use the Ajax method. So say dot Ajax, then inside we add this. So I'm going to use the dot Ajax. Maybe you could watch some tutorials, they will use the get JSON or the get method, but here I'm using the Ajax method. Now the next thing is to put the parameters. The first parameter is the URL. That is where the request will be sent to. And here we are sending the request to the Open Weather Map API. So we go back to our browser and the Open Weather Map. So we can just go here and copy this link. So we copy this link because this is what we're going to be using. We copy this link, we go back, then we paste it here. So we just paste what we got, but we need to add the HTTP. So say HTTP colon then api.openweathermap.org/data/this value weather. Now in place of this London, we are going to concatenate or add this value we are getting from the input field. So we are going to do that by adding, so we take that out. Now instead of the city, we just concatenate this. So in place of London here, we just added the city. That is the city name of the city the user is going to input. We are getting it using this value, then setting it equal to the city. Then we are using this. Then next thing is we can use the metric. So let's use the unit metrics. So we set the units to metric. Units equal to metric. Then the next thing is we add our app ID, because without the app ID this is not going to work. So say app ID, just the way we did on our browser, that we added the app, added this app ID. So I'm just going to copy this, or you can just copy this here, then go back, then take this out, then just paste what we have. So without your app ID, it's not going to work, as we saw earlier. So we are sending the request to this URL. Here is sending it here. Then the next thing is the type. The type we are sending is a GET request, so we are getting the data. Then the next thing is the data type. The data type we are sending, and we are not just going to use JSON, but rather we are going to use JSON-P. Now JSON-P stands for JavaScript object notation padding. Now if we try to run the or get the data without this JSON-P, it's going to throw an error. We're going to see that later, because what most API does is they only allow this JSON-P data type to be sent. Anything other than this is going to return an error. We're going to see that later. Then the last thing here is the success call. So once the request is sent, we want to do whatever is going to be inside of this function. Then after doing this, we are just going to add, if we go to our current.html, let's add the div that will display the results. So we come down here, then we can add a div. We can call it show weather. Then we add another, let's add a span or a div with ID error. So the error will be shown here, while the result will be shown here. So if we go back, so what we want to do now is here we just add where the result will be shown. So we add this, then we say show weather, or let's take this out, we need to add colons, show weather dot HTML. But right now we don't have the data. Here it's just going to return all the JSON data, but we want to get specific data from the results. So right now if we just pass in this data, so we pass in the data so we can see how it's going to look. Or instead, let's just do a console.log. Let's just do it, so see it in our developer console, console.log. So we log the data. So we're going to see this in the developer console. So you go back, you refresh the page. Now to go to the developer console, you just right click, you click on, if you're using Chrome, you click on inspect, and it's going to open this. Then this is the console we want to make use of. Or if you can't do that, you can just go down here, go to more tools, then developer tools. So it's going to open that, but I'll just use this shortcut. Now what we want to do, let's just add so we see the results. Let's say this Madrid. Now we are seeing the results being returned. Now if you check, we have all of these results, the clouds, the coordinates, the mean. Now the mean has humidity, pressure, temperature, maximum temperature, minimum temperature. Now this temperature are being returned in, because we are using the metrics units, so it's returning them in Celsius. Then we have other results like the wind, and also CIS, where we can get the name of the country, the ID, the message, sunrise, sunsets. So this is the data we are returning, but we are not just going to display all of this. We are going to use these parameters here to return the required data. So for temperature, we'll just say data.main.temp to return the temperature. Same for pressure. If we want to return this temperature, if we go down here, we want to return this humidity. We're going to say data.main.humidity. So we're going to return the data. So we have this. In the next video, we are going to display the results here inside of this div. Hello and welcome back. In the last video, we added the jQuery script and we returned the data, and we saw the results in the Google Chrome developer console. So if we go back to the console, or instead of the source, the console here, then we add a city, let's say Tallinn. Then you go here, we see the results being returned. But now what we want to do is we want to get the data that we need and display here for the user to see. So we go back to the weather.js. Now what I'm going to do is I'll just create a function that will hold the returned data, and I'll pass it inside of this success function. So I'll call the function show results. Then this show result is going to take an argument. I'll call it data. I'll call this data. So what I will first, I will return a data. The first thing I want to return here is let me return the temperature so we can see the temperature. Then we close this. So we'll say temperature. Okay, we have the temperature. Then the next thing is to get the data. So what we want to get, we're going to use this data.main, main.temp. Now, as I said earlier, if we go back to current weather, so to get the temperature, we use main.temp. But here, since we are passing in an argument and the data is being returned here, so what we are basically doing is we're saying return data.main.temp. Then the next thing is we need to add the Celsius HTML Celsius symbol. So we do that by doing ampersand dig, then we add C. So this will return the temperature and the degree symbol. So we have this now, show results. Now let's call it in here. So create another variable and call it widget equal to show results. Now this show result is going to take a parameter, and the parameter is going to take is the data, that is the returned data. Now inside this returned data is going to get the temperature, which is main.temp. It's going to get the temperature from this. Now after doing this, we pass in these widgets into this HTML, so the result will be displayed inside the elements with this ID. So what we did here was created a function to return the value, and the function is taking a parameter, we called it data. Now to return the temperature, we're saying data, which is the result that will be returned, .main.temp. We are getting that from here. If we want to do for the pressure, we say data.main.pressure. Then we call the function and set it equal to a variable. Then we pass in the variable into this .html method, and the result will be displayed inside the elements with this ID. Now the next thing is we want to empty this, the input field. So set it equal to empty. So we set it equal to empty. Now what we're going to do now is to test and see how it looks. So before we do that, we go to our current.html to make sure, okay, we have the div to show the results and the div to show the error. So we go back, we refresh the page. Now if we type, let's type London, and we'll click on search. Now we can see it has returned the temperature for London. Now if we return, let's take another city, Tokyo. Now we see the temperature has changed, return the temperature in Celsius of Tokyo. We do another. Now we can see that it's working, it's returning the result as we want. So what we can do now is here just concatenate other values we want to get to this return statement. So it's going to return all of these values. So we can get more space. Now to do that, let's add plus sign. Then we go to the next line. We return, let's return the pressure. So if we return pressure, then we say pressure, then the data dot main dot pressure. So we go back, we refresh, we do this. Now we can see we have the temperature and the pressure. Later we'll have to look for the symbol and add the symbol for pressure here. So to add, we can do that and add every other thing that we need. So if we go back to the current weather API, so what we're going to return is we return the temperature, the pressure, the humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature. Then we can return the wind speed. Then also we can return the country, that is the name of the country. And if we want, we can return the city name as well. So we show the city name. So we're going to do that. We go back. Next is let's return humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature. So just copy this. So we'll say humidity. So here is going to be humidity. Then minimum temperature. So it's going to be temp underscore mean. Then for the maximum temperature, temp underscore max. Here we're just going to be maximum temperature. Then we can return the speed, wind speed. So it's going to be data.wind.speed. If we go back here for wind, yeah, wind.speed. So we are returning this data.wind.speed. So with this, you can return as much values as you want. You can decide to return the wind degrees, the clouds, rain, snow, and the rest. So we've returned this. Now let's see the returned data or the results. Okay, now we have the temperature, the pressure, the humidity, the minimum temperature, the maximum temperature, and the wind speed. This is the returned results. Also, we can go here to add a test here to tell us the name of the city and the country. So what I'm going to do now is just add the city name and the country at the top. So we'll go back to our page. So right here at the top here, we can after this we add history, then history, then we add this plus sign. So what we want to do is say current weather for, then we add this. So say current weather for so let's just change this to single quotes, then this as well to single quotes. So now we add so current weather for data dot name. To get the name of the city, we go back here, it's just name, so we just do data dot name. Then the next thing is we add a comma, then data dot sys dot country. So this is what we are adding. So we say get current weather for the name of the city and the name of the country, but the name of the country is going to be returned as a symbol. So let's go back. If you go sys.country, here we have it here. So it's going to return it as a country code. So if we refresh, we'll see Tallinn. Now see current weather for Tallinn. This is the country code. Well, this is Estonia. So we say Brussels. Now current weather for Brussels, Belgium. Temperature, pressure, humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature, wind speed. So as I said earlier, on your own you can decide to return as much data as you want. Since you've already seen how we've returned the data, we can return the longitude, the latitude, the weather description, the weather icon. Later we're going to see how to return this weather icon to show an image. We're going to get the image, but we're going to place it inside an image tag. Then you can get the main sea level, the ground level, the wind degree, the clouds, rain or 3 hours rain, volume, snow as well. Then every other data we can return. So this is how we return the data and we display it. So in our next video, we are going to see how we can move this to the center and add some CSS styles to this. Welcome back. In the last video, we displayed the results that we obtained from the open weather map, and we displayed them here, like the temperature, the pressure, the humidity. So if we go here and we click on submit, we get the current weather for Tallinn with the country code. We have the temperature, the pressure, humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature, wind speed. And so what we're going to do in this video now is just to add 1 or 2 more data and also add the units. But first, if we go to this results return here, now if you check inside this main object, we only have temperature, pressure, humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature. But if you go to the current weather map, inside the main here, you will find sea level, ground level. But the results being returned, it does not return sea level and ground level. So if you try to get this value, main.sea_level and main.ground_level, it's going to return the result as undefined. So we are not going to make use of that. But what we are going to return here is we return the wind degree. Then also we are going to return the weather.main and weather.description. So we're going to do that here. We go back to our project. Here first, let's return the wind direction. So we're going to return the wind direction. So the wind direction here, so call it wind direction. So it's going to be data.wind.dig, and it's always in degrees. And we'll remove that and close. So we have this. Then top here we can get the weather.main. Now to get the weather.main, we add a p tag. Let's just copy this. First we say weather. Then to get the weather.main, first let's go back to this. Now to get the weather.main, we will use weather.main, weather.description. Then if you go to the returned results, here in the weather, you see that first it's returning an array. Then inside the array we have the object. Now to get any data from this array, we are going to use the index, because this object inside the array is at index 0. So to get, take for example the ID, we're going to say weather in square brackets 0, which is going to indicate the index of this object we have in the array, then dot the name of the key or the value we want to get. So to get the main and the description, we go back here. So it's going to be data.weather, then in square brackets 0, because we have an array, and inside the array we have an object, but the object is at index 0. So we have this 0, then dot main. So then the next one is the weather description. So we can call this weather description. The same, but here it's going to be dot description. So we have the weather.main and the weather.description. So let's go ahead and test it out. So type this. Now first let's remove this. It's not in degrees. It doesn't have any units. So we have the weather, which is clouds, then the weather description, broken clouds, the temperature, the pressure, humidity, minimum temperature, maximum temperature, wind speed, and the wind direction. Now for the pressure, the unit is always in hectopascal. So if you go down here you can see that the unit here is hectopascal. Then humidity, the unit is going to be in percentage. So we're going to add a percentage here. Then minimum temperature, maximum temperature. Then wind direction, the unit is in degrees. So we're going to add degrees. So let's go ahead and add those. So for pressure, it's going to be hectopascal. That is the units. Then for humidity, it's percentage, which is the percentage symbol. Then for minimum temperature and maximum temperature, we use degrees. Then for this, for wind direction, it's in degree. It's in degree. We just copy this and place it here. Then for wind speed, it's in meter per seconds. Meter per seconds, or you can just write it in full if you want, meters per seconds. So we have the units now. Now let's refresh and see the results. Okay, now the results that we have: the clouds, the weather description, the temperature, the pressure in hectopascal, the humidity in percentage, temperature in Celsius, degrees Celsius, the wind speed in meter per second, and the wind direction in degrees. So these are the data we have been able to get from the Open Weather Map API. So we've done this. Next, in the next section, we are going to see how we can do the same for forecast. But for forecast, we can decide to get only just the temperature for 5 days, or the pressure for 5 days, depending on the data we want to get and the forecast. Because for forecast, if we decide to get all the results, it's good for, take for example, you want to get the weather forecast for 5 days, then it's going to return the temperature for 5 days, the pressure for 5 days, the humidity for 5 days, and the rest. So it's going to be very long for us to do something like that. So what we're going to do for the forecast is maybe we'll just get the temperature for only the temperature for 5 days to see how it looks, or the pressure. Because if we decide to go with all of this data, it's going to return a very long data. So we'll do that in the next section. In this video, we want to add a style to the error message first. So if you try to submit the button, you'll see we get an error message, but we don't like the way this error message is being displayed. So what I'm going to do is I'll add a bootstrap alert message, then place the error message at the top of this div that holds this input field and button. So to do that, let's go back into our weather.js. Now for the weather.js, add a class, a bootstrap class called alert danger. So this is the bootstrap class we're adding. So then I'll add an ID of I can call it error city. So I'll use this to style also the div that will hold this, or the span tag that will hold this div. So we have this alert danger. Then we'll go to our current.html. Now we don't want it to be displayed here. We want it to be displayed at the top of this input field, but we'll place it somewhere here. So let's place it here and let's see how it looks. So we'll refresh the page and we'll click on submit. Now we can see we've added the bootstrap alert, but what we want the text to be at the center, and we'll reduce the width of this div, and also we're going to add the close button so that we can close the button here. So we'll do that first. We go to this, we can change this to a div or a span, whichever one you want. Then we add a class, a bootstrap class called text center, to align this text to the center. Then also the next thing is this ID we added here. So let's go and add a CSS so that it will reduce the width of the alert. So we copy this, we go to our style.js, then we add the CSS property. First is the width. We'll add a width of, make the width about 50%. Then we'll set the margin to 0 so that it's going to be placed at the center, or auto. Then the last thing is test align property. It's going to be centered. So the div is going to be, the width of the div will reduce to 50%, and it's going to be placed at the center. So we refresh, and now we see the width has been reduced and it's now at the center. Now what we want to do is we're going to add a margin top, so that here, this input field, we have a margin top, and also add a close button. So let's go and add the margin top. So we add the property here, an inline style. So set margin top I'll set it to 10 pixels. So let's see. Okay, this is far better. Now the last thing we want to do is just to add a close button, so that we can close this div to remove the div. So we go back to our weather.js. Now after the first closing tag for the div, we add an anchor link. Then we close the anchor link. Now inside the anchor link, we are going to add the properties. And the properties we are going to add is the normal Bootstrap properties. First we have the href, which is the target, but we're not going anywhere. So we'll just put a hashtag. Then the next thing is we add a class, the Bootstrap class of close. This is from Bootstrap. Then the data dismiss. This is as a result, or this is obtained from the bootstrap.main.js. So the data dismiss is alert. Then another thing we are adding is area label, just for screen reading, or for those that are using screen readers. So we set it to close. Now one thing we need to add inside here, we add the HTML code for close. That is a star button. So we use the ampersand, then times with a semicolon. So with this, it will add the button that we can use in closing the alert. So let's go ahead and see how it looks. I'll click on submit. Now we have the close button here. We can close it, and we see we have this. So we've added the styles to the alert, or the message, the error message. We added the close button as well. So what we're going to do in the next video is, if we search for a city, okay, we search for a city, what we'll do is we move this div, or this result, to be displayed here at the center. Then we'll just make this to be, we add bold to this. So we'll do that in the next video. In this video, we want to add a footer to this page, and so that later we can reuse the footer, add it to the index.html and the forecast.html pages. But for now, we'll just add the footer to the current.html page. So we go to our current.html. Okay, right here after the div with class container, we add another div with class footer. So we're going to use a div to create a footer. Then inside the div, we create another div with class container. Then we add a row to it. So now what we just want to display, we just want to display a text. But we are going to use this class footer to add a CSS style to the div. So what we want to do now is add a p tag. Then inside the p tag, we just put copyright. Then use the HTML code for it. Copy. Then call it weather app. So now inside this p tag, we add a style. We want the color to be white. And let's see how it looks right now. Okay, right now nothing is being displayed, so we'll go back. But let's go and add the CSS to this class footer. So we come down here, we add footer. Then the next thing we want to do is we begin to add the colors, or the properties. The first one is the background color. We want it to have the same background color as we have been using, that is this color. So we set it equal to this. Then we give it a width of 100%. Then a height of 80 pixels. Then we set the margin top. Margin top. Because we want it to have large margin top. let's say 200 pixels. Then the bottom, we'll set the bottom to 0 because we don't want the footer to have any white space beneath this its div. That is, we don't want the footer to have any white space beneath this div. So we set the bottom to 0. So if we save now and we go to our browser to see how it looks. So let's go and refresh the page. Okay, now we can see we still have a margin here or a white space here. So what we're going to do, let's see if we increase this to 230, that is the margin top. Let's see. Okay, then let's say 240. Then it's going to set, okay, because we don't want the white space to be displayed. Now the next thing we need to do, we need to center this, put this text at the center. So we go into our current.html. Then here, inside the p tag, we add a class, a bootstrap class of text center. We add a bootstrap class of text center. Then here we add a style. So we're going to give it a margin, but instead of that, okay, we give it the padding top of 30 pixels. What I was thinking was, instead of having this class text center here, could just cut that out and add it here to the row. So whatever is going to be inside the row will be placed at the center. So let's have it that way. Then I add a padding to the row. So go back, refresh. Now we can see it's placed at the center and it has a padding top of about 30 pixels. So this is the footer that we've added. What we can do is, in our index page and our current.html, we can just decide to copy this and add to the page. But here, let's just see how this looks. So if we add a city and see, okay, so we have this and we still have the data being placed here. What we are going to do now in the next video is just to add some style, a simple style to this data. We're going to place this data at the center, and also the background color of the div holding this data, we'll add a color to it and just increase the font size of this text. So we'll do that in the next video.